Welcome everyone to Hire Moment Mastermind. I am Shira Lotzar. Happy to be your host today. Hopefully Alki will be joining us in a moment. Vern Schellinger, who is normally with us, is unavailable today, but happy to help you guys out here. So the way we work, for those of you who are new, is this is an open Q&A for any job search question that you have. This is not topic based, meaning we're not going to do a presentation here. This is simply if you got any sort of question from resumes to networking to interviewing to right whatever is sort of on your heart and mind. I'm happy to help. And again, Alki, who's another colleague, he's a recruiter, will help as well. And I'm in my day work in my consulting firm. I'm both a career coach and a recruiter, so I see things from both sides of the hiring aisle, and that's the perspective that I'm bringing. And just FYI, we are private sector focused here. We don't do uh, the federal work here. We know others who do. In fact, there's a woman named Corliss Jackson. She specializes in that kind of work. So just so you know, if you're looking for federal government, this would not be your best place. So with that, glad to see the new faces and the familiar faces. So who has a job search question they'd like to kick us off with? Amanda, you're ready to go. Okay.
Yes, not usually, but something
Today
that
you're
just
ready.
happened like 5 minutes ago. I was on a call with a uh, temp agency.
Mhm.
A friend of mine from LinkedIn, he had a lot of success with them, so I reached out to him to get me connected.
Sure.
We did.
Yeah.
But during the call, so my situation, in case, for people who don't know, and sure, I've worked with you in the past. You know, I I had done like a lot of admin and communications work, and then I took a few years off to basically go back to school to try and maybe go in a different direction, but that didn't work out. So now I'm back in the same direction that I'm in. And so my last like paid job was a couple of years ago and a little out of date. And right now I'm currently volunteering at a couple of or I just stopped one volunteer position and now I just started another one, which has been going really well. So I was talking to her and she was like, yeah, employers, they don't like volunteer work because you're not being like paid for it, and they just think that it's like something you do in your spare time, and they really want like you to be like employed somewhere, either full-time or part-time. And I'm like,
I know.
no, I'm literally doing this for several hours a week. What and I'm gaining a lot of experience. So
Mhm.
why is it that employers think like that, and how can I get around that? Because my last paid job was
A while
a
back.
few
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
Dude, stop chewing on my new computer. I
Sure.
literally just got a new computer. It has more wires, and now my cat is trying to chew on it. Um,
So let me yeah, and I know Amanda, we've been offline when you've mentioned this. And so I'll address this question for you, but I'm going to address it for everybody, okay? Because when a person's in transition, right, you're going to have different kinds of experiences that fill up your resume. Whether that's volunteer, whether that's contractual, whether that's part-time, temporary, consulting, there's a mishmash of things that can get onto your resume. Let me say this about that, Amanda. You're right. Some employers do feel that way. Some do not. I think you've come across the ones who do. And recruiting it's an art and a science, and recruiters are people like you and me, right? So they're coming at your resume from whatever their lens is, and may I suggest whatever their bias is. We all have biases, unconscious or conscious, right? And some people, yes, will absolutely feel that way. There isn't much you can do to get around that other than make sure that whatever that, I'll call it the flexible position that you have in any of the categories that I just mentioned, is actually showcased in a robust way, rather than saying, volunteer X and maybe one line about what you're doing, which sort of makes it almost a little bit dismissive. Actually write something substantive, like a
Mhm.
couple of accomplishment stories, right? That kind of thing where you're actually showcasing, hey, I've been using X skill. I'll give you an example. So there is a nonprofit. And by the way, for those of you some of you on this call might actually want to check these folks out. There is a nonprofit called Taproot, TAPROOT.org. Taproot. Taproot's mission, basically, is to take professionals, particularly seasoned professionals, leaders, and place them, if you will, in a volunteer capacity to do professional work for small nonprofits who can not otherwise afford that level of expertise. So let's say you're a CFO, you're a marketing person, whatever you are, and you want to volunteer your talents in a small nonprofit, right? It doesn't have a budget to hire you, but you want to use your skills, they can benefit from it. Taproot is the connector organization. That's a legit role, right? And anybody who works for Taproot would hopefully have a nice little, section on their resume that explains that very particular seasoned skilled type of work that they're doing. And that's just an example. And so I would recommend you, Amanda, or anyone on this call that's doing something a little creative, beef it up. Make sure that optically it showcases what you are doing and how you are building your skills, particularly, and this is very important, particularly if the skills that you are using directly relate to your brand. The challenge that for a lot of folks when they're doing this sort of creative, flexible kind of work is that they're doing something that has nothing to do with their career field. They're just, it's good work. You're adding value to the community for sure. It's just that it can take you a little off brand. So just be careful in what type of work you showcase, particularly at the top of your resume. That if it is very off brand, either don't mention it or maybe tuck it away under a section on the bottom called volunteer work. But the converse is also true. If you are doing this sort of flexible work that very much is related to your brand, you really want to showcase it. Like make a big deal. In fact, if any of you here are trying to do a career pivot into something new, that actually is something you can highlight. I'll give you an example. Years ago, I was helping a for-profit. I'm again, my career coaching. I'm a resume writer and write LinkedIn profiles and such. And I was coaching somebody who was a for-profit individual who had a passion for the environment. I mean, passionate, right? She was all upset about the coral reefs disappearing. I mean, she was one of those people, right? Really, really passionate. And she's like, I want to get into the nonprofit. It's the environmental sector. And she worked for profit, right? So as it turns out, she had done a little bit of volunteer work. It was like I don't know, organic farm and I don't know, things like that, a couple, three things like that. So we made it, we showcased it right at the top of her resume. And we said something like, I don't know, environmentally related experience or sustainability related experience, something like that. We gave it a little title and lifted it up, highlighted it, called it out, and said, look, this is to demonstrate to you, employer, that this individual is serious about shifting into this kind of work, so much so that she's dedicated some volunteer experience toward it. So you can actually highlight it if it's something that's going to help you with your branding. Yeah, that uplifts your brand, highlight it. If it detracts from your brand, unhighlight it. Does that make sense? So hopefully, Amanda, that's helpful and not just to you, but to everybody, just to say, yes, those are flexible things. And hopefully you get an employer that actually will understand and appreciate what you've been doing, but again, make sure that it's really highlighted well, right? So that it really speaks to, in your case, the communication skills and project coordination skills that you do offer. And then hopefully someone's gonna notice it. So
Yeah.
that's my best
I
advice.
think the other thing gonna do,
Yeah.
the volunteer position that I'm currently doing is with Career Network Industry.
Oh, right.
If
Yeah.
people don't know about
I
that,
know.
go check them out. They are awesome,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna ask my supervisor if I can just
Right.
leave out the volunteer
Right.
aspect of it
Right.
on my
Right.
resume,
That's right.
um, just so it makes it appear like this is a part-time role,
Right.
which
Right.
it is. I'm
Right.
just not being paid for it.
Right. Got it. Well, hopefully that
Yeah.
helps. All right. Who else has a question?
I've got a question.
Oh, sorry. Dave, you and Dominique raised your hands exactly the same.
Ladies
All right. All
first.
right, Dave. Okay, go on. Go
Hey,
for it.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, so I actually went back and checked all the outreach that I've had from recruiters over the last 2 months, and some had me. Typically, what they'll have me do is they'll reach out to me and say, "Oh, you're the greatest person in the world. We have this role for you. It's either a contract or full time or what have you." And invariably, they'll say, "Send me your resume."
Mhm.
And let's arrange a time to talk.
Sure.
Well, I send a resume and
Yes.
invitation to talk, and that's the last you hear from them.
Right.
I went back and circled back with all the recruiters that I had situations like that over the last 2 months, about 20 or so.
Right.
And one person came back to me and said the project was on hold. The rest,
Mhm.
nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if there's a better way to handle that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should I not send the resume? Should I ask to have a conversation with them first? I've even sent them the Calendly link
Hmm.
because it's sometimes you get into that back and forth with
Right.
scheduling
Right.
and nothing. So I just
Can I ask,
I'm just wondering if there's a better way to handle this.
can I ask a clarifying question? Are you mostly being contacted by government contracting recruiters? So
No,
that community? No.
yeah, they're all private sector.
Private sector.
The majority are for contract work, but there's a few full-time opportunities. But the biggest ones, the majority are contract
But
work
when you say contract, you mean again government contracts or just a contract, a for-profit contract role?
for profit
And are
contract.
you in the IT world?
I am.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I was because GovCon and IT, they sort of go hand in hand. So I figured as one or the other. So what you're experiencing is a phenom that is very much in connected to the IT world and government contracting, because again, sometimes they go hand in hand. And here's what I mean by that. And Alki has now joined us. Hi, Alki. And Alki can also speak to this because he's a recruiter. So here's what's going on. It has been, will continue to be a lot of what I'll say freneticism in the IT recruiting world. IT recruiters are asked to find what we lovingly call purple squirrels. Some people call them unicorns. They are the impossible to find candidates. They have to candidates who can, wash your windows and cook your breakfast and everything else, right? And these recruiters are in desperate positions to go find these folks. So they will just spray, right? Just reach out to everybody they can think of, and they are juggling depending on whether they are a corporate recruiter, which means that they're in-house and working for a company, or whether they're a third party working for an agency. Either way, they're either juggling multiple job openings internally or multiple clients externally. Either which way, they're going Mach 5 with their hair on fire. So number one, scheduling is an issue for them because depending upon how they manage their own calendar, they could very easily mismanage and not get back to you. Or because they're looking for the purple squirrel, if you send your resume, you don't have the one little whatever it is that the hiring manager said, and then they don't get back to you. So, Alki, just to back you up, so what Dave was asking about was he says he gets, contacted by recruiters, right, for openings, sometimes contracts, sometimes not. And they'll say, hey, send me your resume. He does. And 9 times out of 10, he doesn't hear back from them. So he's wondering, yeah, we know. So he's wondering if there's another way to go around it. Should he not send the resume? Should he ask for a conversation? Should he send a Calendly link? I mean, there's like a lot of ways to do this. There's no one way, but I want to get you more in the mindset of what's going on behind the scenes so you can better navigate. So this is less around technique and more around, again, mindset. You have to know what is going on the other side. They really, really are that busy. They are juggling hundreds of candidates all at once. And again, unless they have a really streamlined way of organizing it, it can be difficult, especially the way that LinkedIn works. If they're reaching out to you in LinkedIn, we've seen it in the messages, right? You can eat if it's off your page, it's off your page, and it's sometimes very hard for folks to keep track of. So with all of that said, I actually would send the resume because if you don't, it's going to be in their mind that you're not listening or you're not paying attention. So I would send the resume. However, and I don't know, do they ever send the job description to you or they're just
Sometimes, or
sometimes?
they'll do a quick blurb of it.
Right. That's right. Whatever the blurb is, and that's more common. Whatever the blurb is, here's what I would do. Because if you don't have an actual job posting to fully customize your resume, at least, I don't know if you're already doing this, at least take that blurb, that 3-line blurb, and just really read it. Because whatever they're putting in the blurb are the highlights. This is a little bit of the purple squirrel thing that they're saying. We need someone who's got nit, 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 nit. And you got to make sure that on your resume, like whatever the thing is, customize the headline on your resume, the title, like a career title on your resume, the keywords and sort of at the top of your resume, your key skills, down the page, if you've got accomplishment stories that are labeled, you want to just very quickly make sure that if that recruiter gets to open up your resume and put a set of eyeballs on it in 2.2 seconds, I'm not kidding, 2.2 seconds, that quickly what wafts off the page to them are the on the blurb, quick, because otherwise they don't have time. They're on to the next thing. If they can't quickly see it, it's confusing for them. So you've got to make it super easy for them to say yes. So that's the first thing I would do, is do the customization. You can also say, yes, I'd like a conversation with you in lieu of a resume, but again, that may or may not work, because again, they're so busy. They don't have time for these sort of informal chats. They're screening resumes all day long. I think it's fine to put a calendar link. Like, I don't know if they would necessarily, you know, go with that. I think it's just a little bit easier. Instead of all the back and forth, I would just give them like a few times and say, would any of these times work for you? That could be something just easy for them to just look at. So anyway, not that any of this is a perfect panacea. It's not. It's just some other ways. And Alki, would love for you to chime in here.
Yeah, good morning. And if I heard you correctly, it's you get contacted by recruiters, but don't really know what it means all the time, and sometimes they don't respond back, right?
A lot,
Something like that.
mostly they're
Well,
not responding back. When they say, Dave, send me your resume,
Yep.
sends a resume, and then he doesn't hear anything.
Shira described it perfectly. And as she was talking, I was thinking of two T's. There's the talent, and then there's the timing. And I'll even add another one, trading cards, because this is just trading cards. I just shot out some blasts yesterday, but the difference is, as Shira says, is mentality and understanding of what's going on. So us two, because I know us two, if we reach out, we mean it. And, we're going to follow up unless you're just really, really late getting back to us and we've already filled the position. And even then we'll tell you, hey,
We filled the position.
but hey, you look good for something else. I'll hold on. Like, we actually get back to people.
Right.
The other ones, it's like trading cards. We all do blast and we all have trading cards. That's you all. Resumes. We stack resumes. Good talent doesn't work for this position. We stash it to the side. It's all trading cards. If the talent matches, then you become important, as she said it. So as she said, what's happening in your mindset is, okay, we're reaching out because we see something or there's a possibility. The next part, though, is the timing. And that's what she was talking about. When I send it to you, am I like off to an airport somewhere and just sending it to you saying, he'll probably respond and I'll get back to him by Wednesday? Or are we right there by the computer right now, ready to respond back because we have a hot job and you're a perfect match for it? And that part you can't control and you don't know, other than what Shira's saying now. So I would have the mentality of, listen, I don't know when these people are serious. I don't know if they have a real opportunity or not. They could just be collecting my resume as a trading card. But what you can do is what she said. You have choices. One, have your resume ready and tweak it and customize it if you are going to send it. Two, you have the power to ask them, hey, before I send my resume, like, what kind of job is this? Like, what's the opportunity? How soon are you looking to hire? How many people are you seriously looking at? Like, you can ask all kinds of questions, hold your resume until you get those answers, or you can send your resume and still ask those questions. If you don't get answers to those questions, that doesn't necessarily tell you anything either, because their kid could have got sick and they get back to you on Monday. But what's happening behind the scenes is the most important thing, as she's saying. So I would make sure, if I get any information on the job description or bullet points, make sure it's customized and a match. You can also have a bullet version of your resume. Like, okay, you didn't tell me anything, so I'm just going to give you a couple of highlights, but I have questions too. Your response could be a lot of different things to this, but you have every right to ask them, hey, what's going on? What kind of job is this? What's the situation? What's the opportunity? What can you share? Sometimes they can't share a lot just yet, but if the way I feel is, if I'm going to ping you as a recruiter and say, hey, you got time to talk, or can I see your resume? Then it's on me. I should be responsible enough to be ready for your answer and your reply, but it doesn't always happen all the time. So you have to keep it moving, send a resume or not, and then keep it moving, or, ping that person again. And if they don't get back to you after one or two tries, then either something happened or you realize, this isn't as serious.
It's just an egg in your basket.
Yep.
And Dominique, I am seeing your hand, but I actually want to bring this out to a higher level. So if you can remember your question, okay. I think this brings us to, I think, a larger question or a larger topic around sort of the world of recruiting. We haven't talked about this in a while, so I think this is a good time to do that. But more importantly, from your perspective, um, the ways in which you land a job. Now, I'm going to put networking in one category over here. I'm going to put the job boards over here. When there's a job board, whether it's LinkedIn's job board, Indeed, Career Builder, trade board, whatever. I want you to think of that. And if anybody's ever been in the consulting world or the government or what have you, and you've heard or experienced or responded to an RFP. So an RFP, request for proposal, right? We've got some head nods. All right. So when a company sends out an RFP, I want you to equate that to posting a job on a job board. It is exactly the same thing. When they send out an RFP, in fact, if any of you had nodded your heads, have you ever sent out an RFP to go get some vendors? Tangi, you've done that. John, Adam, right? You want to go find I don't know, an IT person, whatever you want, right? You're going to go find the person. So you've now sent it out to 10 different companies, all right? One of those 10 companies will probably land it. 9 will not. But here's the flip side of that. Tangi, Dave, Adam, have you ever had it happen where you didn't send an RFP? You had an existing relationship with somebody. Uh-huh. And you got a person. You got a girl, you got a guy, you got a person. You're like, you're my person. I don't need to send out an RFP. I am working with you. And that person showed up because of the relationship that you had with them. Okay. I want you now to transfer that over to the job search. It is exactly the same thing. When a company posts the job, it's like they're sending out an RFP, but it's not to 10 people. It's going to be 110 or 1,010 or right. That's how many people are now going to respond. So your chances of getting that job are very slim. And I know this as myself as a consultant. I'm sure Alki's experienced this too. When I have a relationship with someone, they just call me. When I don't, and now I have to compete with colleagues, I now have to think, wait a second, what's the size of my firm? How am I competing? The chances of me winning an RFP are very, very slim. But when I show up before the RFP is there, I typically get the work because it's based on relationship. Okay. So on the one hand, if you just respond to a job posting, and Dave, what is happening to what your question is kind of actually in the middle between these two. When you respond to a job posting, you now have more competition than you can shake a stick at, particularly if it is a remote job. Let me say that again, particularly if it is a remote job, because now everybody in the country ostensibly could apply. So post-COVID, your competition has gone 10x, at least. Pre-COVID, it was still intense, but now it's worse. Hybrid actually have a little bit less competition because a lot of people don't want to work back in the office. So there are a lot of candidates who are not going to apply. So you actually have a higher chance of getting the job if it's a local hybrid-y kind of a thing, particularly if it's a 5-day a week. Nobody wants that anymore. So if you're open to that, you really have a good shot. But that's rare. So this is the job posting side, right? And then I'm going to go one step over with Dave's situation. So in Dave's situation, it wasn't that he applied for a job on a board, but somebody reached out to him, but reached out anonymously. In other words, sort of a little bit of a spray kind of a way. That recruiter went, right? Like sent it out to a bunch of Daves, whole bunch of Daves, hoping that somebody is going to be appropriate, a good fit or whatever. Because they also know, look, when we recruiters send out those notes, not all the Daves are going to respond back. Plenty of people are not going to see our note, are not interested. It's the wrong timing for them. They're happy in their job, not job, right? So we only know that a small percentage of the people we reach out to are going to reach back out to us. Okay, so know that too. And so again, there's a higher likelihood that you're going to be able to get through the interview process because it wasn't a job board, it was somebody reaching out to you. But even so, they're reaching out to a lot of people. Okay. And then you go the networking route. And in networking, you've got relationships that you're building is a little bit of a longer term play. But when you're networking with the right people, or like I like to say in the right fish pond with the right fish, people who either know you really well, or more importantly, know what you do or do what you do. Those are actually some of the best referrals, the people who do what you do. They are not your competitors, they're your competimates. They're partners to you. So Dave, what is the kind of job title that you typically go for?
Digital transformation leader.
Great. Okay. So other digital transformation leaders are actually some of your best connections. Those are the people who are going to watch this. They're going to hear about opportunities from recruiters that are not right for them, but could be right for you. So when that recruiter says, hey, Susie Cream Cheese, digital transformation leader, I got a role. Do you know anybody? She goes, oh, not me, call Dave. Okay. So that's just sort of that informal networking. But then I'm going to go to another level. And actually, this is happening right now on my desk with a coaching client where the job is actually created for you. That does happen. It does happen. I actually am brokering right now a relationship with have a job seeker with a coaching client. And it happened to be that I have somebody in my network who I think could be a good match. I wrote to this person and I said, hey, this is what this individual is looking for. And he goes, oh, let me see if I can create something for her. It does happen. Talk about networking, right? That can happen. If you have the right kind of skills at the right time, what Algie was talking about, the talent and the timing, it could be that somebody says, I need you right now. I didn't know I needed you until you showed up, but now I actually know that I need you. And that's the road not traveled because there's no competition there. That's just between you and that employer to see if there's a fit. And I know I happened years ago with another client. She was corporate Marriott. She was like, marketing lead and all this. And she decided she wanted to go into the nonprofit world. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, right? She better manage your expectations. Sure enough, she had a connection with the USO and she networked her way in and they created a role for her because they needed a skill set that she had. It can happen. Okay. So this is my long speech to help you understand in the world of getting a job over here, if you're just going for the job board, that RFP route, your chances are much less likely. But the more you go over to the networking where the air is thinner and there's very few competitors and you show up before your resume. Let me say that again. When you show up before your resume and your reputation precedes you, your chances are much greater. Does that help? Alki, do you want to add anything to that?
A lot, but I'm only going to add a little bit. I agree with everything. You know, we just had somebody who was on this call who blindly applied and got a job.
Mm-hmm.
So it does
Does
work.
work. It can happen.
It does happen. But we always just say, in addition to your job board searching,
Network.
10x your job search by these other routes. And there's a couple of other things probably that, creative things that Shira probably didn't mention because we do this as recruiters, but a lot of us don't push talent or sell talent. I actually like the model, the sports agent model, coming from the sports world like I do. And I always hope to be at the point where I'm like, yep, I'm representing these great candidates. I'm all about shopping them around and people are snatching them up. Well, it doesn't always happen that way, but it happens. And a lot of times they're like, yep, we don't have anything, but we'd hate to see her go to one of our competitors, something like that. We're going to make a job for her. I'm working on a search right now. That's a brand newly created position as well. So things happen out there. So it is worth your time to apply for jobs, but do other things. And then last note I'll make too, Dave, and others is, sometimes when recruiters contact you, nothing happens. And you're like, they're just wasting my time. I hate recruiters. I hate headhunters, which I get it and I understand. But then sometimes when you least expect it, they call you back. Hey, what are you doing right now? Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, I'm out with my kid. Well, you got time for an interview right now? So that's really what the expectation should be on the world of recruiters and headhunters is be surprised if they actually have a hot opportunity right now, because the way that it's built, or at least the way that they do it, again, not Shira and I, but the way that most of them do it, they're stacking their bench with talent, or they have a job, they're not sure who matches yet, or you might be a candidate who's in the ballpark, but they haven't gotten feedback from the employer yet to know who they like, who they don't like. So I would say lower your expectations when they do reach out. Just go, all right, I'll talk to you. Here's my information. But it's 2 weeks later or a week later or a month later sometimes when they call you back and they're like, okay, I have an opportunity that works. Look at them as just like realtors that you reached out to say, hey, if you find this dream house of mine, give me a call someday. And that's what the expectation should really be.
And I'll give you one more analogy, then we'll go to Dominique. Thank you for being patient. My other analogy I like to give on this call is to think of yourself like a farmer, right? Farmers plant lots and lots and lots and lots of seeds. They expect that 50% of them will be taken away by the birds, the wind, and the rain. They do not have an expectation that all of those seeds are going to pop. In fact, they're pleasantly surprised when some pop when they didn't know that they would. Okay. That's kind of the expectation you need to have. Yes, do all the things. Yes, you can do some job postings. That's fine, 10% of the time. Do lots of networking, seed, 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 seed. You never know what's going to pop and when it's going to pop. But your job is to just do your job, get your relationships out there, get the resume out there. You do what you do, what you do. And then one day when you least expect it, somebody calls. You're like, wow, there was a sprout there. That's a blessing. Okay. So that I want to just kind of encourage you all. Don't be fixated on all of the seeds that you're planted, because farmers don't do that because they know there are mitigating circumstances out of their control. You just plant and then just wait for the sprouts to happen. Okay. Because God brings the harvest. All right. Dominique, hope you remember your question.
Actually, if I may, my own experience, I was contacted like within 3 days for the same position for three different recruiters, not in-house recruiters. And it turns out it was for ServiceNow. And I learned that actually there's a tier contractor, and the one that were contacting me were not the preferred contractors for service used by ServiceNow. So the chance of my resume being even seen was so low. Nothing came out from that. But I really learned there's definitely a tier of contractors or recruiters, their relationship with company, and sometimes, as you said, they just go broad because maybe there's a chance, but that chance is so minimum that you would be lucky to break that barrier.
Yeah.
My question, I'm in the tech industry in the leadership, and for different kind of job fair, and it looks that the market was getting slightly better. But I was wondering if with the result of the election, the seeing of tariff and maybe inflation and everything, if you have seen where people are suddenly rethinking their hiring plan, or starting to think maybe we hire but less, or I don't know,
I think that it's a little bit too early to tell because
Okay.
nothing's really happened yet. It's just a lot of speculation. What I will tell you, Alki, I don't know if you're seeing this. I'm seeing federal employees get very nervous. I've had three federal employees contact me in the last week already saying, I'm fearful of my job. I want to get out. Help me get out. Okay. So I'm already seeing I think recruiters and coaches are going to get like flooded with employees who are fearful. So that's one thing. And well, in the federal government, I know I said I wasn't going to talk about federal government, but I think that they're going to be doing a hiring freeze at some point, probably, because there's going to be we know there's going to be restructuring there. The knock-on effect of the changes in the federal government to the private sector, there will be some, I'm sure. The tariffs and all of those things, I think that remains to be seen. I think for now, people are cautiously something. Optimistic, pessimistic, I don't know. It just depends. It depends on the company. It depends on the sector. It depends on for-profit, not-profit, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just a lot of variables right now. We're in a time of transition. That's what I can say. And so keep doing what you're doing. Don't think as much about the market. You need one job.
No, I know. And it's been almost a year, so I've had my ups and downs.
I hear you.
Last job fair, I was like, and then now I feel like my souffle is
No, actually, there are going to be jobs created out of all of this too.
trying to. I know it's stupid, but I just sense of
don't worry about it. Seriously, Dominic, don't worry about it, because honestly, there are going to people think, the disruption. There are going to be jobs created out of all of this transition, because there are actually some people in the country who are corporations, right, who are actually very pleased with the transition and from an economic perspective. So don't worry about it. It'll work out as it's supposed to. Okay. You just do your job, put your head down, and keep doing what you're supposed to do. And God will help you.
Okay.
And it's definitely not stupid, for sure. Definitely not. And I will say that I think a lot of people and organizations learned to pivot, whatever that meant for people during COVID, if they hadn't already learned to pivot already. But I think there's been a lot of pivoting, shifting, balancing, rebalancing, stacking, restacking of Legos. And I think anybody who really kind of paid attention over the last year, just not us, the job seekers, not us, the recruiters, but just us as people. This has been a real crazy year, just the last year. So the wisdom would be, as Shira says on side A of the album, steady, stay steady, steady as you go, keep your solid resume, your solid, interview skills and all those things, your elevator speech ready. On side B of the album, be pivotable and be ready because, you may need to tweak like, hey, I know you haven't done this before, but yeah, we just lost 17 employees and we need somebody now, but it's not the department that you want, but it's close to what you want. I would also be thinking of those things to be agile. If you don't want to compromise what you do, great. But as Shira is saying, yeah,
Yeah,
we
no,
we don't know how this thing's going to turn out. Some people may go overseas and leave their jobs, and thus there's a job. There's a lot of ways this could go. So I would say have side A and side B ready, because it could go in a lot of different directions.
And remember, even when we've had the worst economies, people still get jobs.
Mm.
People are always getting jobs. It's just a matter of the sector and the timing. And again, like Alki said, you never know when a job is suddenly going to come open because somebody's leaving. There's a lot of musical chairs that go on. People leave and then there's an opening. Someone else leaves, another opening, and you just don't know the timing of that. All right, Josh.
Yes. My question I have, should I put that I'm working part-time on my resume, even if it's just a local part-time job? I've heard conflicting messages, so I'm just love to hear you guys' perspective.
I would, if it's not related, you're saying it's not related to your brand and what you, right, what your
Correct. Unrelated.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the last, remind me, when was the last full-time job that you had? When did it end?
Last August. It
A
was marketing.
year ago, or just the
Yeah.
one? Just a year ago?
Last year. Yeah.
Okay, so 23. All right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would put it down. Don't make a big deal of it. Remember, earlier I was talking about optics, where I was suggesting for Amanda the opposite. Hey, if it's for example, let's say it's in her case, it's a communications role, it's volunteer, make a big deal, showcase your skills. In your case, if it's not related to your brand, I wouldn't make a big deal. I would list it just to show, hey, I'm working, but I'm talking one line, like company title, date, maybe that's it, or maybe one line about what you're doing, so that optically they're not focused on it. They're focused on what's important. And I would suggest this for everybody in your resume. This isn't this answer is not just for Josh. In general, there is an optics factor when looking at resumes. There's what I call weightiness to resumes. So in general, the jobs and the qualifications that you want to emphasize, make a bigger deal of, and give more real estate on your resume to that work, and less for the things that you want to de-emphasize. Because optically, people will look and they'll see, right, what they need to see based upon how much emphasis. In other words, I don't feel like you have to give equal real estate to every single job on your page. That's my point. You can expand and contract depending upon what's relevant to your brand. So that's a general concept. Hope that helps. Pete, and then
Sure. Can I add something to that though, real quick?
Oh, sure.
I had a friend, and I was going to say, Josh, I would put it on there, and like Shira said, but with just small real estate, because I had a friend who had to go through a security clearance, and that job showed up, but it wasn't on her resume, and so then the company felt like she had lied on her, or she kept information off.
Right.
So I would put it on there, and then I also, if it's part time, I've done this. Actually, I think I got that idea from you guys here. But next to the title or whatever, put in parentheses part-time or contractual.
That's right.
Or something like that. But I would not leave it off, especially if you're applying for a job that may require security clearance.
And not only security clearance, just regular plain Jane reference checks.
Yes.
So this is something that leads to another point, and Pete and Amanda, see you. This is important. Okay, everybody listen up. Listen to me when I say this. This is so important. If you are no longer employed at a company, please put your end date on your resume and on your LinkedIn profile.
Yes.
Alki's smiling a big one. What Tanji just said is so true. Regular companies who do regular reference checks, employment verifications, Be accurate. I have seen, I'm sure Halki has too, people lose opportunities for any of the following. There was inaccuracy on when they left, if they've left. I just had this right now. I had a senior, an executive level candidate, because I'm a recruiter. I'm doing a search now. And the individual, I guess, I don't know whether somehow the employer got the impression that the person had either misrepresented or didn't talk about why they left, whatever it was. There was this little, date, whatever. The employer's like, hey, they didn't represent it. If it's an inaccuracy around your dates, either whether you left or didn't leave, but also the other dates on your resume. It's very easy when you're doing your resume over and over to miss a year. You put 22 and it was really 23, and that's inadvertent. Double, triple check on your resume, and then make sure it all aligns on your LinkedIn. That's the tricky part, because the way that LinkedIn works and the way that LinkedIn is laid out in your experience section and the way your resume is laid out might actually be different. Because with LinkedIn, right? So sometimes you'll see it'll say, your company X and then jobs Y and Z, and they'll lump it together, but maybe on your resume you separate it, whatever it is. Make sure the dates are accurate. Also, your degrees, if you have any. If you have one, make sure the dates are right and the degree. If you don't have one, do not misrepresent or inadvertently misrepresent. So for example, if you haven't got your degree yet, but you're X credit shy, then you could say, for example, bachelor's and in parentheses, expected graduation date, or 20 credits from graduation, or something like that. You need to be accurate. Employers will sometimes check, and if there's anything, they will ascribe it to ethics. They will say this person's dishonest, they're not representing themselves, and one of those slip-ups will literally cost you the job. We have both seen it over the years. Typos on resumes. I mean, I could go on and on and on. They're looking for accuracy, and really what they're looking for is integrity. They will examine every little aspect of your candidacy, what you write, how you write, what you leave off, what you put on, accurate, all dates, all of it. They're looking for, can we trust this person? And I mean, attire, all of it matters to employers. So whatever you do, be honest. Now, you might have to explain something, but don't not put it on because you're thinking, I want to make it seem as if I'm still employed. If it comes out, not good. Always go with the high road, because that's just what you should do anyway, but especially with the job search, because we have seen the other side. So sorry, that's just my little soapbox.
I'm sorry. In that vein is too, with the what if it's like a 2 or 3 month?
People ask me that all the time. It's a little dicey. I generally go with do it, because again, for the reasons of it is what it is, and they're going to ask, and what are you doing? And I would go for it. It's better to just have the explanation than not, because if you don't have it and you get questioned on it, what are you going to say? Okay. You don't want to have to dance around that. I know it's feels kind of weird, right? Because I get that question a lot. That's my opinion. It's personal choice, but that's my opinion is say it rather than not say it.
My
question is in relation to that. Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I know we're trying to do the flowy thing in the hand, so we'll just.
I'm sorry. I apologize, Amanda. I'll stick this in real quick. I'll be brief because I really want to be long on this. One of the reasons I was laughing is because I just talked to a candidate the other day, and I'm a skilled recruiter and a headhunter, and she came as a referral. So my whole thing was, listen, whatever the case is, it's fine. Her resume told all kinds of crazy stories, looking at the dates, and they crisscross, and they didn't line up, and all that kind of stuff. As a friend of a friend, I assured her, I let her know, like, listen, we're going to get through this. Don't worry. Like, I don't have a job that I'm kicking you out of. I'm helping you. I'm learning what you're looking for. But if I did have a job, looking at these dates, and as I try to ask questions, okay, you were where 2013 to 2015, but yet you were at another job 2014. And that's why I asked, were you full-time on that job, but you were also full-time on this job? So when we first get a resume, and forget us, the managers, they're the ones who have less time and patience and less understanding. Like Shira and I and recruiters, we're going to ask you, tell me about this job. How, why were you there? Oh, that was a mistake. Okay, listen, don't make that mistake in the interview, but I'll help you out right now. We do things like that sometimes. Recruiters don't always have time, though. If they've got 25 other better looking, more accurate resumes, they're not going to take time with you. Hiring managers, they have 2 minutes to look at the two resumes we sent over. And when they look, their mind views things one way. These dates should line up. These titles should be titles that I understand, and blah, blah, blah. They expect you to be perfect, even though what Shira is talking about is being accurate. You want to be accurate. We rarely come across perfect candidates, but sometimes we do present to the employer, hey, I found the perfect candidate that you're looking for. That's rare. Forget perfection. Accuracy is what you want, because if you have to explain a date, that's already in their mind like, oh, see, they're already having to explain things. I don't even know if I want to go beyond to ask them more questions because I got 2 minutes and I got to get to a meeting. And so if everything's accurate, they don't have to look again. And secondly, to her point, yeah, if you've got something wrong, they're going to be like, this candidate can't even be honest on the dates they work. They can't even be honest. So why would we even take a chance and hire? And last thing I'll say is, I tend to tell candidates, like, if you just left on Monday and it's Friday, maybe, when I see it, I'm like, okay, are you still there? Because that's the number one question we ask and employers ask when they start looking down. They're like, all right, so I see you're with, but in your mind, you're like, no, they just laid me off. But it says here with, you're still with them. If that happens in the same week, like you just got laid off, we might be like, okay, you're just getting out here. You probably didn't correct it. But if you're talking 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and I've told people this, like, dude, that was 6 months ago. You're not still there. So I'm like, all right, you're already like trying to trick me already. So it's important to be accurate on your resume because, yeah, you may not even get an opportunity to be looked at or considered just by
employers are trying to minimize their risk. We always say this, and they will try to minimize it in every possible way they can. One way is by accuracy. Amanda, I know you had a comment. Pete, is it okay if Amanda goes real quick? So, because it sounds like she's connected to this. Amanda?
Yeah. So, yeah, my question is in relation to this. So, I was laid off last week after 6 years with my employer. And I am on severance through January. So, what would be your recommendation for the actual end date?
That depends on the employer. We get this question a lot.
Okay.
Ask the employer, until what date are you on the payroll?
January 10th.
Okay, then January 10th it is. Whatever you're on the payroll, that's right. And you might have a different opinion, but that's what I always say. Whatever's officially in other words, if an employer were to call a year from now and say, what were her end dates? If they would say her end date was January, then your end date is January. That's how I say it.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you so much.
Do you have a different view on that?
I've seen it both ways because I've been a part of restructures, reorgs, and massive layoffs and severance and things of that nature. I think that in this case, you at least have a story that you can tell. So either date you list, if somebody asks you the question, your explanation will make them go, oh, okay, I get it. You're on severance. That's different than if you were laid off, back in March and you still have that as a present date.
That's different. That's different. Yeah. That's a nuance, because if you listed, what is it, November, right? And then a year later they call and they say, oh, she actually left in January of 25. Then be like, wait, why is there inaccuracy here? That's where I'm coming. It's just whatever's official is what's official.
Yeah. Does it matter
too, if the severance is a lump sum or like because I'm in the same situation. I was laid off in July. My last day on payroll was July 9th, I think, but I got a severance, and it is for 6 months of severance.
It's whatever you have to ask HR from their records. What date are they indicating is your last day, regardless of severance and timing and all that? It's literally
the date I was given was
your termination
day I was
whatever the determination date is, that's what
August. Yeah.
Term date.
I was going to say too, on most severance letters, it tells you your last date of employment.
Exactly.
It's the very first line, and that's the date you should use. Because even though they're giving you severance,
right,
to them it's quote unquote a gift,
right,
if you will. But as far as they're concerned, your last date of employment is then, and it can hurt you if you're dragging it out. If you say, well, I got a 3 month severance, but my last, you don't want to look like you still work there because then people think you got to leave a job
Right.
too. So, whatever that letter says, that's what HR is going to go by.
One other thing to think about too, and you mentioned HR. So all the HR teams that I've sat on, we talk about termination, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, whatever. So in our mind, it's term date. What's a term date? Term date. Term date. That's in our head. Term date. You also need to be prepared, regardless of your resume. And we say this a lot on this call too. Whatever you put on your resume, be prepared to speak to it, be asked about it, to defend it, to represent it. Because let's say it's a 5-person, God forbid, it's a 5-step interview process. So at first you speak to the recruiter and you explain, whatever the case, but that recruiter doesn't edit your resume. They pass it on like, hey, you're going to the next round. All right. You speak to the hiring manager. After that, you sit on a panel. Maybe in that panel, you got all the way to the last minute of the interview, and then somebody asked a question. Hey, one more question. We see here it says you're still there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so you're still working there? When are you going to be available? Now you have to speak to it. The worst times that I've seen this happen, and I have been seeing multiple situations. I have a candidate, and I'm like, yep, last interview, it's with the VP. This is just going to be them filling you out. All you got to do is talk to them for 10 minutes, 15, and then I'm expecting they're going to send your offer over the next day. Well, I have talked to the candidate and said, all right, how did it go? And they're like, oh, it went great. And I'm like, all right, I'll let you know when I hear back from them. Then an hour goes by, 2 hours go by, and I am having to track them down. And then I talked to the VP, and the VP is like, oh yeah, I got in the interview, and I know a buddy over there. And they said, yeah, she worked for XYZ department, or that department. They stopped working here like 4 months ago. Mm-hmm. So you have to be prepared that regardless of what's on your resume, you've got to speak to it, and it needs to either match, or you need to be prepared to speak to it in a way that won't send them left in your interview process.
Imagine if your resume was something that you had to sign to attest that all of the information above is accurate. Have that mindset. That's your mindset, because that's literally how the employer is looking at it. If you get sent it to us, we presume that all of it's accurate, and they'll hold you to it. Because again, they're minimizing the risk. All right, Pete, you have been so patient. Thank you so much for going with this whole flow.
Well, I figured I'd chime in on Josh's thing as well, and then follow on with my question. I think it's very important, at least on LinkedIn, to include that in your experience section, your part-time thing. Because one thing I've heard is, if your experience section in your LinkedIn profile shows an end date, especially, if it's like over a year or longer, you fall down lower in the
that's true.
Search for results when recruiters are looking for people. So if you do have something that you can keep current, that is still present, to the present time, I think is very beneficial.
Along those lines, I'm gonna add on to that. The whole thing with the experience section, it's a little funky, right? Because do you have a part-time job? Do you not? And what order? Something you can control, because you can't control the algorithm, but something you can control, I'm going to bounce to a different topic, is your headline, your career headline, right under your picture. The key words that you use in that headline matters. You've got to think like a recruiter. Recruiters are, in fact, to Dave's point, right? Because recruiters were looking for you, right? They found you. How did they find you? Heard you tell? They went to the search bar and they put in digital transformation or whatever it was, right? If the first words in your headline directly match what the search terms are that recruiter used, you are much more likely to be found on page 1, 2, 3. And if they don't, you're less likely. So for example, if you are a marketing professional, marketing leader, let's say, you would want to put, for example, director of marketing in your headline rather than marketing leader. Because we recruiters, we're not going to put in marketing leader in our search term. We're going to put in director of marketing or VP of marketing or whatever it is. So try to go, you have to sort of think like a recruiter, the job title that you believe you are qualified for and that you're interested in, and say, if I were a recruiter looking for me, what kind of title might I use? And you can use multiple. I did this the other day with an IT person. And there are multiple titles he could use. He could use test architect. He could use software quality assurance manager and something else. And so we literally put all 3 titles in his career headline with a little pipeline in between, so that if there are various variations of that the employer uses in the search bar, he was likely to be found. Okay. So it's less, if you're really actively job seeking, it's less important that you have a cute, quippy kind of phrase, oh, I'm a something that, or like a little tagline. Those are lovely. That's not as important right now as having really accurate keywords that speak to the same exact title that an employer might be using to find you. I hope that's helpful, because when you do that well, you really think about, like, did actually the other couple weeks ago with somebody, and he suddenly, after we did this, he suddenly got recruited by an employer after 10 months of searching. And all of a sudden we worked together and we changed his headline. All of a sudden he got this. It was amazing. But he was a salesperson, but he's a SaaS salesperson. And somebody who's going to go after a title, if there's some sort of moniker, like a descriptor, like SaaS sales or B2B sales or nonprofit marketing, or if there's some kind of sectoral flavor to what you do, you may want to put that in. I'm a healthcare financial executive. I'm a whatever that sector is. If that's really where you play, you may want to put that in first, because the employer is often doing that. I might put in because I work with associations often. So I might put in director marketing association. Well, those kinds of people, if it's in their headline, are more likely to come up. So again, think like a recruiter. If you are recruiting for you, what terms might you put into the search bar? Okay.
Can I add on to that?
Sure.
So another thing with the tagline or headline, I mean, I think you're allowed 240 characters, so by all means, take advantage of that if it's currently very short, and add those additional, job titles. And you could even use chat, some sort of AI tool for similar job titles that you could put in there. Another tip there I heard was you shouldn't use the pipe symbol in your tagline, because that's treated as an or.
This is new news.
In search results. So like in mine, I recently changed it, and it's kind of like a triangle that I use in between mine.
Oh, like that bracket on the bottom of our keyboard, the bracket that's above the period.
No, I use a special emoji.
Emojis, okay.
In between.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with Kevin Turner or not.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin, he's a LinkedIn guru and whatnot. I watched his CNN presentation, and that was one of the tips he shared.
Oh, great. That's great. So basically use an emoji instead of a pipeline.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Great. Thanks.
It's funny because Shira and I love the pipes.
Yeah, we do.
It looks good, but I'm told that
great.
It's treated as an or from a search perspective.
Yes.
It's interesting.
And the pipeline is, Josh, what you just put in the chat. For everybody's edification here, on your keyboard, right above the enter key, if you hit shift and that key, the one that's right above the enter, we call that a pipe. It's straight up and down line.
I think it's what most people have in their headline to separate.
It's true. I didn't know that. Thank you for that tip, Pete.
Some of us probably are okay with it, but if you're in the job search and wanting to be found, it is something to consider too.
And so, Pete, to your point, you said use an emoji. So Adam said, what should we use? So there are a lot of emojis on what they call LinkedIn friendly bullets. You do two things. Either you can just Google LinkedIn friendly bullets. You'll find other people who have LinkedIn friendly bullets all over, or you can go to my page. My personal LinkedIn, I happen to use diamonds, the diamond emoji in between all of my things. You're welcome to use mine. All you do is just copy it. Just highlight it, copy it, paste it. And you can do that, by the way, not just for your headline. You can use it all throughout. I usually do that when I write LinkedIn profiles for people. In the about section, I'll have little bullets, little emojis. In the experience section, if you want to have bullets for your accomplishments, use the emoji. It's cute, but it sounds like from what Pete's saying, there's an added benefit of using it. So again, you're welcome to mine, or just Google LinkedIn friendly bullets.
Just a quick question. What's wrong with or? I thought that was the whole point, right? Per the example that was just cited, this person was a testing analyst or a quality assurance person. I
Yeah,
thought that was the point, is
Pete,
that
what did the person say?
The way Kevin Turner seemed to explain it was you might get thrown out. Your subsequent job titles might not get included because of the or as opposed to it being treated as well, I don't know. I guess and wouldn't be appropriate, but he seemed to indicate that it could eliminate some of your keywords could be eliminated.
Should we use a comma, or would that meet the same effect?
That comma's
I
not going
think
to look
using
very good.
the diamond,
Yeah, the
I think is
emoji.
actually what I kind of have as well. Like Shira had mentioned.
I'm gonna pull up my own LinkedIn so you can see what I'm talking about here.
Well, while you do that, I will address Dave. To Dave's point, though, there are people out there who may, for the example we were talking about too, if you want to be seen as A or B or C, then I don't think that hurts, because specifically, like if I'm recruiting, there are some times where I'm looking for this type of candidate, but if they have this experience as well, I'll take that. Or if they have this, I'll take that as an or as well. So that's why I was making the point that it all depends on your target and what you're going for. If you want to sweep in everybody, then you may want to consider that. But if you're like, no, I don't mind if I'm seen as just this because I've got 5 years of that, or I don't mind if I'm seen as this because I've got 7 years of that. So I'd be open to that type of opportunity as well, as long as you understand that you may be slicing off some of your opportunities over here, but you're willing to take that at risk.
So right here, you can see in mine, I have the little diamonds. Again, you can go to mine, just copy it, paste it, and you're done if you want something easy. All right, we're kind of rounding the corner here. One last question, and then we'll wrap up.
I guess my question was, as far as like specific recruiters, do you have recommendations for trying to find recruiters that specialize in like nonprofit?
Yeah, so great question. I'm going to answer that question, but answer the broader question around what do I do with recruiters? Do I find one? Do they represent me? I'll give a little speech, and then Alki, feel free to chime in. As it happens, there are a number of nonprofit recruiters, okay? You can just Google it. You could certainly go into LinkedIn and just type in nonprofit recruiter or association recruiter or whatever it is. That's fine, because nonprofits and associations frequently, frankly, use recruiters. Why? Because they're small. In a small organization, presuming they have the money for it, they don't typically have an HR person, or if they do, they certainly mostly don't have a corporate recruiter. So they oftentimes need to go outside to a third party. Every sector is different. It really depends. So I mentioned in Dave's case, sort of that IT world, the requirements for IT professionals are so intense that oftentimes third party recruiters are needed, because there's just too much specificity. Like they need the extra help. But there are some sectors where either they can't afford or they won't. Take social workers. If a social work agency was going to try to find a social worker, they typically don't have a lot of budget. They're typically not going to be able to go to a recruiter. Now, you're not necessarily going to know that for your sector or for your profession, but understand that recruiters specialize in career verticals or industry verticals. So there's recruiters who specialize in, Alki knows someone very well who specializes exclusively in commercial real estate search. That's what she does, period, end, okay? And she even kind of has a region, but that's what she does. Or somebody who might specialize in financial services, or government contracting or whatever. Some people have a profession that some recruiters have a profession. They just recruit for marketing people. For any marketers on the call, there's a firm called Torchlight Hire. And all that firm does is they just up and down the marketing world, or they just recruit accountants, or they just recruit IT people, or they just recruit HR people. Again, there's not a recruiter for everybody, for every sector and for every profession. But to find out, you can go to LinkedIn and you can put in your profession and then put recruiter, or your sector and put recruiter. So financial services recruiter, commercial real estate recruiter, HR recruiter, accounting recruiter, something like that. And you can see if maybe recruiters pop up. If they do, then, and by the way, technical recruiter is the most common title ever. So Dave, someone like you, definitely say technical recruiter and you'll get 50,000 of them, quite literally. if you find any recruiters that are in your sector, then feel free to link in with them. 99 times out of 100, they will accept your request because recruiters are looking for, they're always looking for good talent, and they want their database to be filled. And so Alki just mentioned nonprofit HR. So nonprofit HR solutions, they're a search firm. I mean, I myself am. There's professionals for nonprofits. Staffing Advisors also does nonprofit search. Then you've got the executive search firms like Heidrick and Struggle and Korn Ferry, those kinds. But if you're looking for sort of like more mid-level, then the ones I just mentioned. But there are other like very small firms. What's her name? Beth Cessna. You wouldn't necessarily know her. I think it's Cessna, and it's Cessna. Cessna, that she does nonprofit search. So there are going to be a lot of sort of one-off boutique firms, people like me and Alki who are solo recruiters that you just wouldn't know of. But again, just do the search and hopefully we'll show up.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. So I'm looking at time here. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. And what I put in the search bar, which I need to remember to do more of, I just put in the tab for the recordings for these calls. So especially for those of you who are new, we've been doing this call since August of 2020, if you can believe. We used to do it every week, but earlier this year we shifted to the every other week. And I try to keep up with the recordings, but sometimes I miss it. But anyway, you're going to see a lot of these. So feel free to avail yourself of any of them. Feel free to pass them on. Yes, and Alki just put in his email. I will put in mine as well. And I know we are both open to complimentary calls. So if you do want to have an informal chat with us, I'll go ahead and put in my Calendly link. I'm going to do that right now. And Alki, I don't know if you have one for yourself, but I'm going to try to do this more often. So here is Shira's Calendly link. There you go. And if you do, if you would like to explore more formal support with coaching, feel free. But otherwise, happy to do a quick call. And Alki, if you have a similar link, you're welcome to do that too.
Yeah, just 1 second.
FYI, it's snowing in Northern Virginia.
No way.
Conversationally.
Huh. Well, it does look like the white sky. That's
in Ashburn it is.
All right. I heard that it was snowing in Altoona, so maybe we're getting a little of that. Anyway, okay, so we're going to formally wrap up the call here. And for those of you who want to stay on the call for a short prayer call that I'm going to offer, you're certainly welcome to do that. Look forward to seeing everyone, and feel free to invite your friends for our next meeting, which should be, Lord willing, in 2 weeks. So we're every other Friday. All right. Have a blessed day, everyone.